And the next and the last presentation, the title is Teaching Observation, Forming and Utilizing Checklists. And the presenter is
Φερεσίδη Καλλιόπη, παρακαλώ.
Hello again. All right, so dear Chair, dear colleagues, thank you again for the opportunity of sharing with you my suggestions on teaching observation and evaluation by forming and utilizing checklists. Teaching observation is the most suitable means for teacher evaluation and professional development. Observation is the most important research method and data collection technique related to a research problem, but also the most basic technique for evaluating teaching and learning in practice. As a method of psychopedagogical research and evaluation, it is related to the perception of the student and the teacher, their behavior, their actions, and their creations. Observation is defined as the careful monitoring and recording of the unfolding of phenomena without the intention of modifying them, which is done with or without the help of appropriate means of study and research. Therefore, if we want to study and evaluate and thus improve what a teacher does and how he or she works as an example of teacher's phronesis, we need to observe him in the classroom. Teaching observation is the most important source of information for the instruction and generally the educational work carried out by teachers. It has an extremely important role for the feedback they receive during feedback discussions with the evaluators. Excuse me, there is a problem with the PowerPoint. All right. So, observation can be informal, in which the evaluator's overall impression of the behavior of the evaluated is recorded, or formal and systematic, in which analytical recording keys are used during a predetermined observation period. The observation key for teacher evaluation consists of criteria and focal points of interest and ratings for each one, as well as a field for evaluator notes. Rubrics are also used as an important tool for observation and evaluation of teaching, which contribute to professional learning and development, as they function as guidance and feedback. Observation tools such as keys and rubrics focus on the process and context of teaching, relationships, roles, and principles, but also mostly are complemented by descriptive discussions and feedback, which complete the assessment procedure and suggest further necessary training and activities of professional development. So let us not forget that even student observation plays an important role in both diagnostic and formative as well as summative assessment. For this reason, it is argued that most of the assessment in the classroom relies on informal observations, which allow the collection of information necessary for the continuous monitoring of student progress. The observation is based on certain principles and needs to follow a certain course so that it achieves its specific purpose and its individual objectives. During the observation, one records movements, words, dialogues, facial expressions, playful activities, postures, displacements, and generally everything that can be noted. Observation presupposes a subject that observes, the observer, and an object that is observed, the subject to be observed. When there is no distance between the observing subject and the observed object, then there is self-observation. In this case, the emphasis is on the information that each person gives about themselves. On the other hand, peer observation varies from random to organized and systematic attempts to record and evaluate another person's teaching. Random observation is not subject to any particular rule or principle and is done every day by the individual, wherever one is, through recording genuine, original, and spontaneous behavior. Systematic and formal observation is done deliberately, with predetermined plan and purpose, paying more attention to precisely defining the conditions of observation. In the school setting, the observer will need to have prepared the subjects of observation for the situation he or she is studying each time, and to have made sure that they agree. Let us emphasize that observing means that the necessary conditions of security, trust, consent are fulfilled. Observation thus becomes more participatory. Direct observation is when behaviors can be observed through one's senses, whereas indirect observation is made when the subject of observation is not directly accessible to the human senses, such as intelligence, but only indirectly by recording its externalization. So basic steps of teaching observation are taking notes from random observation, making a list of identified behaviors, defining the categories and the recording method, discussing on and testing the list of categories with one's colleagues, applying the final list as an observation key or as a checklist, and finally utilizing these tools for documenting the descriptive and qualitative assessment of teaching. Observation takes place during teaching in the classroom, either directly or on recorded session, and feedback discussions take place both before and after it. For this reason, in order to practice one's observational and evaluative skills, they can make use of material from films and documentaries that present teachers during teaching. Based on a paper of mine back in 2015 in Greek, I would like to present such an evaluative observation attempt in which filmed teachers were observed and a checklist was developed to capture the characteristics of their teaching based methodologically on content analysis. So I specifically observed teaching behaviors of Monsieur Mathieu, Mrs. Watson, Mr. Keating, and Monsieur Sciutis, Kyrios Sciutis. But then I compared my data with other films as well, but also two award-winning semi-documentaries with a higher degree of credibility, Entre les murs with Monsieur Marin, and Être et avoir with Monsieur Lopez. Here we can see how the data from the film analysis was tabulated for each of the film teachers. It was in Greek. Then, as mentioned before, I sorted the data and formed a checklist. That is a checklist of characteristics of effective teaching, and implemented it for all the observed teachers, as mentioned. So, in this checklist, I included all kinds of information collected during observing the mentioned film teachers. In each category of observing, there was an action that led to an effect. In this way, I recorded all my remarks on the teacher's adjustment to the new school environment, their self-assessment, their knowledge and scientific excellence, their relationship with students, their teaching, time management, professionalism, management of delinquent behavior, but also of gifted students, And finally, the teacher's relationship with the school principal, with colleagues, and with students' parents. This practice of observing has been very fruitful to me, not only as a means of forming checklists and observing, but also as a motive for self-reflection on my own teaching and self-improvement. Therefore, I believe that forming and utilizing checklists are essential skills for teachers who seek for self and peer assessment in order to improve their teaching. Thank you. That was it.